Thanks for joining us, Senator Pate. Bill C-5 was moved very quickly through Parliament, and it looks like it is due for a third reading and a final vote by Friday in the Senate. Do you think this is moving too fast?
Well, certainly many people have written to us, have called our offices, and the witnesses who appeared in Committee of the Whole and the pre-study in the Senate said that. And so, yes, I think there's an urgency. Then all the witnesses who appeared have said we need to move. We obviously need to move to be able to deal with some of the trade issues that are of concern. But when it comes to the consultation pieces, that we should be taking at least the summer to do that. So that's something that we have heard loud and clear. And, they're in the House of Commons, they separated out those two sections of the bills, but then still passed them. So we're expected to pass it by Friday here as well.
What are some of the concerns you have with the legislation as far as Indigenous groups are concerned?
Well, the Indigenous leaders who appeared before us have been extremely clear that they think there should have been adherence to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, free, prior and informed consent, and those consultations needed to happen before the bill is passed, not afterwards. We're heartened by the fact that a letter was received. I just received it today, but it was written yesterday by Minister LeBlanc, basically reassuring us that the kind of consultations that need to happen will happen over the summer. That's hopeful. However, it's not in the bill, and so the concern remains that if that commitment is not lived up to, if it's not in the bill, how will it be remedied? And so that's a concern. And there's also concern about, obviously, the environmental, social, and economic impacts for those who are left behind. And the national chief, Cindy Woodhouse-Nippinack, when she appeared before us, talked about the fact that there are national infrastructure or infrastructure projects in First Nations that are of national significance, and was a plan to actually implement, provide resources to ensure that those needs are met. And that, it certainly wasn't a clear response, but those are the sorts of questions that many of us have. We see that the need to deal with interprovincial trade is obviously important, the need to build up the capacity in Canada. But as wildfires are raging and many First Nations are dealing directly with that issue right now, it's very clear that the need to consult, the need to take into account the environmental, but also the economic and social interests for Indigenous peoples is crucial.
Senator Pate, will there be enough time to make amendments at the committee level, and do you plan to make any?
I'm not planning to make amendments, but if there are amendments coming that are around free, prior, and informed consent I understand that possibly one or more of my colleagues, particularly one or more of my Indigenous colleagues, may be making amendments, and then I will certainly look to those. And I will be speaking today about the need to look at these issues. It seems pretty clear the bill is going to pass, and so getting on the record as much as possible about how important it is to hold the government to account for the commitments it's making, particularly if some amendments were made at the House level, maybe more will be made here. But now what remains to be seen is the action and the follow through. And many of us are committing to continue to follow up and try to ensure that the government is held to account.
Senator, we got about 40 seconds left. The Liberals generally had good relations with Indigenous groups under Justin Trudeau. Do you think the Carney government is running the risk of sabotaging these important relations with this legislation?
Well, certainly many leaders have raised the concern. If they've raised it with me, they've no doubt raised it with many other senators as well, that good relationship stands to be interfered with if the commitments aren't followed through. So I think a lot remains to be seen, and based on what happens in the coming months, weeks and months, if the Prime Minister does not follow through on the commitments he's making now to consult with Indigenous peoples, I think it could very well harm the relationship. My hope is that he'll live up to those commitments.
Senator Pate, we'll have to end it there, but thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Creason.